because we are usually teaching world religions in the afternoon, but I thought I will be having this class in the morning, and ethics I will be teaching in the afternoon. Okay. In fact, in our last several discussions, we looked at, in particularly, the one main idea in world religion, the concept of God, and also we looked at the arguments presented in order to confirm or prove the existence of God. And then in my last discussion, we looked at the Buddhist and other arguments that have been presented in order to refute or negate the concept of God. Today, I thought I will be looking at Jainism for several reasons. In fact, I have a few more discussions on theistic religions, but I thought of discussing Jainism with you because very often Jaina religion sometimes is not considered to be a world religion. Usually the definition of world religion is, why we call a religion world religion is because that religion has gone beyond the place of its origin. It has gone to the other countries. Now, for example, with the third Sanghayana, during the time of Emperor Ashoka, we know that Buddhism was spread into different areas in India as well as different countries, which included Suvarnabhumi, which is considered to be this area today, and then also Sri Lanka. So actually, on the part of Buddhism, we can see that it was Emperor Asoka who started making it a world religion, because he spread it outside India. Now, this did not happen to Jainism, because one reason is actually Jainism has certain religious practices which make them fairly restricted to one place, because the practices are sometimes so severe. They don't travel very much. So as a result, particularly traveling abroad long distances did not take place. So as a result, Jainism remained basically Indian religion. However, more recently, Jaina followers have gone in many countries, like European countries and other countries in the world, settled down. Now they have established Jaina religious centers outside India. So in that sense, you can say that it is becoming a world religion. Okay, but apart from that, actually Jainism is very important for several reasons. In particularly, as people who are studying Buddhism, as Buddhists, it is very important for you to know Jainism, Jaina philosophy, and also Jaina monastic tradition. Actually, when you see the monastic tradition, Jaina monastic tradition, you will see a lot of similarities. There are lots of similarities, not only in the concepts, but also in the practices. Okay. Now, also you can see, you can understand better the comments and the sometimes criticism found in the Buddha's discourses on Jainism. So, because Jainism is always mentioned in the discourses, and Jaina philosophy is mentioned, and then Jaina Sramanas are also mentioned. But those things make more sense when you know more about Jaina religion. In fact, I would say that Jaina monasticism is a very, very important area if you want to do comparative studies in future. Of course, in order to read Jaina literature, you have to know Ardha Magadhi. That's a form of Prakrit language. Pali is also a Prakrit language. So Ardha Magadhi is also Prakrit. Now if you know Pali, because you know Pali, Ardha Magadhi is not very difficult to understand. So you have to know that language, and then it is very interesting to compare and contrast Jaina and Buddhist monasticism. And also it is very interesting to see Jaina philosophy and to see how it is different from Buddhism. I really don't know about Burmese language literature. I don't know whether there are any significant research or publications in Burmese language on Jainism. Do you have many, or what is the situation? Now, if there are not many, in fact, that can be particularly a very good research area. And also, some of you can produce academic work on Jainism, particularly on Jainism and Buddhism. Okay, and so Jainism is important in the context of Buddhism. Okay, in order to understand Buddhism better, Jainism is important. In order to understand Jainism better, Buddhism is important. Okay, so you can really study these two religions together. And apart from that, Jainism is again very important as a non-theist religion. Now, last week I discussed Buddhist critique of the concept of God. Now, Jainism is also a non-theistic religion, okay? Doesn't believe in God. And also interesting to see any arguments why they don't believe in God, okay? I did not touch that aspect because I myself actually don't know much about it. But no, that's another interesting thing to think. Apart from that, Jaina philosophy. I will give you some idea about Jaina philosophy today, but Jaina philosophy is also very, very important philosophy. And in certain respects, quite in line with Buddhist philosophy in some respects, okay? So therefore, why I am discussing Jainism this morning is for you to see really something that in the Buddhist studies we do not pay much attention. But Jainism, we need to pay much attention. So anyway, this is just a basic introduction to Jaina religion. Jainism is one of the oldest religions in India. It is pre-Buddhist, although it is 24th Tirthankara, ford maker. Niganta Nathaputta was a Buddha's senior contemporary. The 23rd Tirthankara, Parshvanatha, is considered a historical person who lived at an earlier period. Jaina derives from Jina, meaning conquer and conqueror. One who has conquered the defilements caused by karma. Also, Muni, Samana, Bhagavan are used to refer to Jaina Mahavira. Jaina leader known as Vardhamana in his lay life was a Shastriya prince born to Siddhartha and Trishala, mother and father, royal family in Videha, present Bihar. He was born in the 6th century BCE. At the age of 30, he renounced the household life, practiced austerity for 12 years, and attained Kevala Jnana and lived another 30 years, teaching people the path to moksha. He passed away at the age of 72 at Pavapuri in present Bihar. Now, this is basically an introduction to his life. So, Jainism is actually one of the very old religions. Some people believe that it's even older than the Vedic religion. Some people believe that it existed in Mohenjo-daro, Harappa civilization, that along with that. But those things are not clearly established, but certainly it is one of the old religion. It's pre-Buddhist. They use this word called Tirthankara, Tirthankara. In Pali we have Tirthakaro, Tirthakaro. In Sanskrit, Tirthankara. Actually, this Tirthankara is a very interesting concept. We do not use that concept to refer to Buddha. But in the Samanyapala Sutta, you see this concept has been used to refer to other religious teachers. But idea-wise, it is a very interesting idea. Tirthakara, Tirthankara, ford maker. Actually, ford means to a river, there are certain places people can get into. You can't get into a river from every place. There are some safe places where you can get into the river. Everybody, you know about Oxford. Actually, Oxford means Oxford. That is also, that idea. Tirthankara means the religious teacher who makes possible other people to get into the religious path. Like ford makes an entrance to a river, so this person provides an entrance to religion. So that's why concept of Tirthankara. So 24th Tirthankara is Nigantanatha, and then 23rd Tirthankara is considered to be Parshvanatha. Parshvanatha is also a historical figure, maybe lived before the time of the Buddha. Exact dates are not known, so belonging to an earlier period. Now, when you look at the similarities with the Buddhist tradition, again you can see that the Jaina Mahavira, Nigantanatha is described as the 24th Tirthankara. Now in the Buddhist tradition, we believe that the Gautama the Buddha is 28th Buddha, right? 28. So these stories are very interesting, the way they have developed, like the stories about the historical development about the Buddha concept, we say Buddhology. In the Buddhist studies, sometimes, this term is not very much used, but basically what scholars mean by this concept is Buddhology. Buddhology means studying the concept of Buddha. Of course, this is being used even in a wider sense, but in the narrow sense, Buddhology means studying about the concept of Buddha. So, as you know, there is a very expanded Buddhology in the Buddhist tradition about the past Buddhas, about the future Buddhas, and all these things. Now, similar developments you can see in the Jaina tradition also. So, in the Jaina tradition, 24th Tirthankara is Jaina Mahavira, who was contemporary to the Buddha, and the 23rd was one who before that. Now, as scholars, as people who are studying Buddhism academic manner, it's important for you to think, how do these things develop? Now, both in Buddhism and Jainism, you can see this concept. Yeah. Then, did someone borrow from the other? We don't know really. But interestingly, you can see in both traditions, you will see not only that there are many similarities in addition to the differences. Okay. Now, moving into the second paragraph, Jaina derives from Jina. Now, this word Jina we are also using to refer to the Buddha also. Okay, Jina. We are using this term. And the Jaina comes from Jina. Jaina means those people who belong to Jina, Jaina. It is grammatically tadhita. Meaning conquer, to conquer. Jina, Jinati, conquer. And also conqueror, one who has conquered the defilement caused by karma. Now, according to Jaina belief, defilements are caused by karma. So this is a very important idea both in Buddhism and Jainism. But in Jainism, karma concept is one of the most central, and their ideas are quite different from the Buddhist ideas. In the Mahadukkha Khanda Sutta, of the Majjhima Nikaya, Buddha compares and Buddha comments on Jaina views on karma. So Jaina belief in karma and Buddhist belief in karma, again, very, very interesting themes to do a comparative study. And other terms used to refer to Jaina Mahavira, they are called Muni, they are called Samana, and he is also called Bhagavan. So the Muni, Samana, Bhagavan. And again we know that Buddha is also, we are using Sakya Muni, Mahamuni, right? And Bhagava, Samana, Samano Gautama, Samana is always used. Now Samana is a common term for Jainism and Buddhism. Even today, some Jainas use these two words, Samana and Samani. Samani are what we call like Siales. So they are using the word Samani. And then for the monks, they are using the word Samana. So Samana, Samani are both Buddhist and Jaina. So if you see that, you can see lots of, the comparative points, in the language also. And then moving into the next paragraph, you look at again the life of Jaina leader as before he renounced. Is again there are a lot of similarities between Siddhartha and the Jaina leader. The Buddha's the life as a Prince Siddhartha and Jaina Mahavira's life. So his name was Vardhamana in his lay life. And also he is a Shastriya. Buddha was also a Shastriya, right? The warrior family. And his parents were Siddhartha and Trishala. And they are from the royal family of Videha. And 6th century BCE. And at the age of 30 he renounced. Again, according to some groups, Vardhamana got married and has a daughter. But according to some other groups, Vardhamana did not get married, so they are not unanimous about the view. But on the other hand, we know that again, if you take the Siddhartha's life and Vardhamana's life, you can see there are similarities. The Siddhartha renounced at the age of 32, right? 28, I'm sorry. And then he renounced at the age of 30. And then he practiced 12 years. And Siddhartha practiced 6 years. So, like similar things. And then he attained Kevalin, that means the state of something like enlightenment, when he was 42 years old. And then he lived another 30 years teaching like the Buddha. And when you look at Jaina and Buddhist literature, actually these two religious teachers have never met each other. Although they were living close by, they never met each other. I mean, there are no records. But a lot of Jaina leaders, Jaina religious people have met the Buddha. And in the same manner, you can see in the Jaina literature also, there are references to the, the Buddhist disciples and about Buddhism. So you can also see, what they mention about Buddhism. Their critique of Buddhism. It will be very important to know what will be the Jaina criticism of Buddhism. We know the Buddhist criticism of Jaina ideas like karma. So anyhow, so he passed away at the age of 72 at Pavapuri. Actually, this Pavapuri, I don't know whether it's the same place as where the Buddha attained Parinirvana. But looks like the similar name-wise similar. After his passing away, his community split into two main branches, namely Digambara, those who wore sky or who went on naked, and Shvetambara, those who wore white clothes. Nikantanataputta himself lived naked, symbolizing the absence of desire for any worldly thing. The Buddhist literature records that there were turmoil among the disciples after their teacher passed away. During the Chandragupta's time, a teacher named Bhadrabahu left with a group of pupils for Karnataka to escape famine, while his pupil Stulabhadra remained with other group. When the teacher returned, he found that those who remained had given up nudity and started wearing white clothes. This is considered to be the beginning of the schism, separation, and the biggest visible difference between the two groups. Actually, two Jaina groups are Digambara and Shvetambara. Digambara means naked. Literal meaning of the word is Digambara. You wear the, the region or the directions as your cloth, which means figurative, the expression of saying that they are going naked without any clothes. And then other people started wearing white cloth. According to this tradition, this started during the Chandragupta's period, roughly about 150 years after the passing away of Nikantanataputta. Now, this the interesting thing, Nikantanataputta himself lived as a naked ascetic. In the Buddhist literature, we have references to naked ascetics. Now, you remember in the Sanyutta Nikaya, Achela Kassapa Sutta, Achela. Achela means no clothes. Okay. In fact, in certain areas, even today, there are Jaina Digambara naked monks. These are some of the reasons why Jainism did not go outside India. Because in the Indian society, Indian culture, when you see Jaina sadhus or Jaina Digambara monks going naked, I mean, it has become kind of okay, people are used to it. But if it happens outside India, it will be a little bit problematic. So anyhow, these are some reasons, why it did not spread outside India. But in India itself, even today, there are groups of Digambara monks who think that, that is being faithful to their religious leaders' original practice. Now, sometimes you may feel that this being naked is a weird thing or unacceptable thing. Actually, if you look at carefully, you can see that for someone to be naked is, I think, extremely difficult thing. Physically, of course, it can be a cold weather. I can see all of you are so, dressed with for the cool weather. But just imagine somebody without any clothes. So it is not an easy thing to do. And also socially, if you are just naked in front of a group of people, it's a very difficult thing. So I think to go naked is not a simple thing actually. Of course, in Jaina disciples, there are samanas and samanis. Digambara samanis don't go naked, they wear clothes. But only the samanas, male don't wear anything. But what I am trying to tell you is this, this practice of going naked, although it looks like laughing stock at some point, I don't think we should treat it like that. I would consider it to be enormously difficult thing for someone to do. Particularly if you have any idea about yourself, you can't go naked. So in a way you can see that the naked ascetic doesn't have any idea about himself. So anyhow, these are some of the things you can think about. So according to this story, it started in Chandragupta's period. Ever since there have been these two groups in addition to some minor groups. The differences between the two groups are not only on the dress, They differ on many minor matters and some major matters such as the original Jaina literature. Actually, between these two groups, there are several or number of differences, but some differences are not very important, not very severe, but some others are very important. For example, about the Jaina literature. Shwetambaras have a 45-volume literature, which they claim authentic, whereas the Digambaras maintain that the original literature is lost and that the existing literature is later. Tattvartha Sutra or Moksha Sutra by Uma Swami, written around 2 to 5th centuries Common Era. The only Sanskrit text is accepted by both groups. So Tattvartha Sutra is in Sanskrit, but there are many other texts that are in Ardhamagadi or Prakrit language. Okay, this Uma Swami's Tattvartha Sutra, or it is sometimes called Moksha Sutra, is accepted by everybody. So this difference is a major difference. According to Shwetambara, they believe that there is a canon like our Tripitaka, about consisting 45 books. But Digambaras, who are more faithful to the tradition, I mean like original teacher, they say that original literature is lost. So whatever they have is written subsequently. Now if you take again, contrast this with Buddhism, actually Buddhist literature is older than Jaina literature. Although Jainism is older than Buddhism, you can see Jaina literature is later. Okay? Although Buddhism is younger than Jainism, Buddhist literature is older, because Buddhist literature started really just after the parinirvana of the Buddha with the first Sanghayana, and then it gradually developed. By the time the 1st century BCE, end of 1st century, the Tripitaka we have today was committed into writing in Sri Lanka. But then we are talking these texts as 2 to 5th centuries Common Era. That means about 200 years even after the Tripitaka was written down in Sri Lanka. So in other words, roughly about 7 centuries later, after the passing away of their leader, their texts were. So the texts were really written different periods. So some people believe that texts were written like several hundred, only about 200 to 300 years after the passing of Nikantanatha, but we don't know. But anyhow, among the scholars, Buddhist literature is considered to be older than Jaina literature. Although Jainism is older, its existing literature is considered to be younger, belonging to the 3rd century BCE. Or roughly, they think that it belongs to the 3rd century BCE, which is still about 2 to 300 years after the parinirvana of Jaina Mahavira. The differences on other things, such as whether Vardhamana, was married or not. Shwetambaras believe that he was married, but Digambaras rejected, are not very important. There is no difference in philosophy and minor differences in practice. But if you take the philosophy, there is no difference in the philosophy between the two groups, but there are minor differences in the practice. For example, even Shwetambara, Digambara, Shwetambaras wear white clothes, whereas Digambaras wear nothing. So these are some of the differences. Now I think the even more important aspect is philosophy and the doctrine. The key tenet in Jainism is Anekantavada, or the view that many-sidedness of reality. According to this view, reality has many aspects which an ordinary person cannot see comprehensively. In this context, Jainas like to refer to the story of blind people who described an elephant taking a part as the totality. Responding to this many-sidedness of the reality and the limitedness of human knowledge, Jainas say that there are 7 methods or perspectives, Nayas, method or 7 perspectives, Naya. I'm sorry, again, not method of, but method or 7 perspectives, according to which reality may be described. Now, this idea is something very important when we look at Jaina philosophy, this idea of anekantavada. Anekantavada. If you take the concept aneka anta, aneka anta. If you analyze still further, na eka anta. So the anekantavada means na eka anta. You reject one-sidedness. So it is not eka anta. Eka means one, anta means extreme. So it is not one extreme or one end. So anekantavada is not one end or not one side. Actually what it means is many-sidedness of reality, not one side. So anekantavada is many-sidedness of reality. They say that reality has many sides. Ordinary person cannot know the reality completely. Now, in a way, it's a very true statement. If you look at this, you don't see what I see. I don't see what you see. You see this side of the pen. When I do like this, I don't see this side of the pen. I see only this other side of the pen. And the other side of the pen you don't see. If I look at this table, I see only from this perspective. If I go to the other side, I see from another perspective. If I go to this side, I see from another perspective. If I just go under, I see a different thing. If I go above, I see a different thing. So now you can ask, what is the right thing? Is there one right way to look at the thing? Now, this is in a way, very simple matter. Jainas say that we ordinary people can never have a complete perception of anything. Every time our perception is limited. Now, as I demonstrated to you, yes, it is limited. The way our eyes are, when I am like this, I don't see the back. But suppose if I had an eye behind my head, then I will see all. But it so happens, I see only this, and then you see only this. So our human perception is limited. So why? Because the reality is many-sided. So on the one hand, you can see that human beings are limited, and on the other hand, you can see that reality that come into our perception is many-sided. Okay? Now, Jainas have this very favorite story about it. Group of blind people and elephant. Actually, this story is also in the Buddhist literature, but this story is found very much in the Jaina literature. So, of course, it can be found in many literatures, but the Indian literature, for the same point, we have both in Buddhist literature and Jaina literature, we have the story. So the story, as you know, is like these blind people, they just describe the elephant by what they touch. Some people who touch the trunk describe, in one manner. Some people who touch the feet of the elephant, another manner. Some people who touch the ear, they described it in another manner. So like that, these blind people who just describe the elephant only from different perspectives. Now the important thing is this, when you say elephant is like this, of course it is not true, but on the other hand, it is partially true, because elephant's trunk is like that, so that description partially describes elephant, right, but not completely. So none of the blind people is wrong completely. Right? Even the person who touched the ear of the elephant is right, but he is right to a very limited extent. In other words, every blind person who touched the elephant make this, the description about elephant, they are not completely wrong, but they are not completely right either. Okay? So because the reality is on the other hand many-sided, our perspective is always very limited. Okay? Now, philosophically what is interesting is actually ultimately about reality, we cannot make any definitive statement. Whatever the statement we make about reality is always partial. Now, if we take partial statement to be a completely correct statement, then that is troublesome, that is problematic, right? So long as we accept that our perception is limited, then what we are saying is also limited. Now this is something very interesting because in Jaina philosophy, one of the greatest virtues is they are so much for non-violence, non-violent society, non-violence in the behavior. Now in society, violence starts when people make absolute statement. And you make a statement and you say, no, this is true. What you say is not true. What I am saying is true. Now these blind people may have been fighting with each other. One says elephant is like this. The another says elephant is like that. So they are fighting. But to see that all people fighting are in a way wrong, all people fighting are in a way right. They all captured one part of the elephant, but then they consider this one part to be the whole. So the part-whole relationship comes there. We see only this and then we describe table according to this. But then that is only a part. We didn't see the other parts of the table. So our description doesn't include them. Okay? So you take one aspect or one part of an object, and if you describe it to be the totality, then of course you are wrong. But when you try to push a wrong view with another person who is trying to push equally wrong view, then two of you are fighting. But according to Jaina philosophy, they considered ahimsa, non-violence, ahimsa, non-violence to be one of the major ethical quality. So the non-violence. Now non-violence, according to, you can see that this philosophy goes very well with the non-violent, this theory goes very well with non-violent character of the Jaina philosophy. So the Anekantavada, the view that many-sidedness of reality. According to this view, reality has many aspects which an ordinary person cannot see comprehensively. In fact, according to Jaina belief, only a Kevalin means the who has the absolute knowledge, like our Arahant, who has comprehensive knowledge. Only such person can know any particular object comprehensively. Okay? Now in our case what happens is when we see this side, we can't see the other side. Very simple matter. But Kevalin will be able to see the table as a total object. Okay? Responding to many-sidedness of the reality, the limitedness of human knowledge. Now two things. One is the reality is many-sided. Human knowledge is limited. Our perception is limited. Now my example is a very simple thing. The way our eyes are situated, we see only certain things. We don't see other things, right? And also, suppose we had a telescope-like eyes, then we will see this object as a very big object, right? Suppose we had a microscope-like eyes, then we will not see these things. We will see only very, very subtle atoms. Now we see this object because the way our eyes are. But again we can see, actually we can ask the question, is this object exactly as we see? because this is how we see to the human eye. What about a dog or cat? Will they agree with us? Will they see the same thing? Dogs' eyes are different from our eyes, right? Cats' eyes are different from our eyes. So can we say that dogs and cats are seeing the same thing in the same manner we are seeing? No, actually our perception is limited by the nature of our faculties. So what Jaina says is, if that is the situation, you must not make definitive statements. Reality is one-sided. So then you have this idea, Jaina says that there are 7 methods. Naya, they use the word Naya. Naya means method. Actually, method of 7 perspectives, yeah. And then method of 7 perspectives, yes. According to which reality may be described. We will see briefly what are these Nayas, but I am not going to go into greater details. But describe something with reference to its general, non-distinguishing characteristics. Naigamanaya. Describe a member with reference to features common to all in the class. Sangrahanaya. Describe something with reference to its practical use. Vyavaharanaya. Describe something with reference to the unique time and space. Rijusthananaya. Describe something with reference to its name or names. Shabda. Describe something with reference to its etymological analysis. Samabhirudanaya. And describe something with reference to its specific context. Evam bhutanaya. Now actually if you look at carefully, what this means is, you can describe any particular thing according to any of these Nayas, methods. Okay? You can describe something in many different ways. Now describe something with reference to general, non-distinguishing characteristics, Naigamanaya. For example, you take a dog and then you say dog is a domestic animal. Now if you say dog is a domestic animal, there are other domestic animals also. There are cats, sometimes there are cows, bulls. All these things can be domestic animals. But you can describe dog as a domestic animal, right? Very, very common. Describe a member with reference to the feature common to all the class, Sangrahanaya. Now if you take dog as the member of the animal class, then you can describe dog as an animal. Okay? And then member has certain things. Now animal has 4 legs. But all animals have 4 legs, we can say. So, some of the characteristics of animals, okay? And we describe dog as a 4-legged animal. Like that. Sangrahanaya. Describe something with practical use. Now we can also describe animal as somebody who is barking when a stranger comes. Right? We can describe dog like that, right? We can describe dog as or the animal that barks when somebody is coming, somebody unknown is coming. A thief is trying to steal things, the dog barks. So you can describe dogs in that manner also. Describe something with reference to unique time and space. You can describe dog, the animal that who is always in the garage, or who is always on the doorstep, or something like that. It's not one way to describe one thing. There are so many ways. And then you have Shabdanaya, Samabhirudanaya, Evam Bhutanaya. So you can also describe dog. For example, in Pali language, dog is called Sunaka. Now, Sunaka means dog. But on the other hand, if you take the word Sunaka, we can say Su. What is the meaning of it? Dog in Pali is Sunaka. But also you can etymologically describe Sunaka. What is the meaning? Good nails, exactly. Does it nails? But then good nails, we can say good nails. So the dog has good nails. But that is, but of course we don't, every time we say Sunaka in Pali, we don't think about nails. We simply think about the animal. But if you want, you can describe the animal etymologically. So that is Shabda. Describe something etymological meaning. I mean, you can look at the word, you can look at the etymological meaning, and then describe something with reference to its specific context. Now, when we are describe something in a particular context means particular situation. So, we can be describing dog in a particular situation, okay. Like in a living situation, what is the dog's function and things like that. Now, you can see one animal, dog, we can be describing in, according to this view, 7 different ways, right? 7 different ways. But do you think that one way is absolutely correct? No. Many different ways, all are correct in different sense. Now, according to this view, we cannot really say, okay, dog is exact like this. No, we can't say that. It depends on how we look at the dog, how we describe the dog. There is no one exactly correct way of describing a dog. There can be many different ways. So the reality is can be viewed from, so somebody who is very good in grammar can be describing dog according to etymological meaning, according to language. But for somebody, dog is animal that runs, that goes behind you wherever you go. That also is a description of the dog. A dog is also someone who is barking when a stranger comes. That is also another way of looking at dog. So, Jainas say that reality has many different ways. So, if reality has many different ways, there are many different ways to describe reality. So, these Naya means methods. Now, actually, you can go into details of this, but I will just giving you some. And then awareness of this complex nature of reality and the limitedness of human knowledge makes Jainas avoid any definitive assertion and to adopt a sevenfold predication, which is called Syadvada, or the view of relative assertion. Now, based on the earlier concept of Naya or the Anekantavada, now if you take Anekantavada, it is this view is usually translated into English as one thing is we can simply say non-absolutism, or literally we can say the view of many sidedness of reality, the view of many-sidedness of reality or non-absolutism, that is Anekantavada. And then we have Syadvada, Syad. Again, Vada means view, Syad. Syad in Sanskrit, in Pali language, Sya. Sya. So, Syad, Sya. So, Sya means it could be, it is possible. In the discourses you have Siyako, Pananam, Devang, Kamyo and so on and so forth. So, the Syadva, the Sya, that means actually the difference is if you say Asti is, if you say Syad, it is possible. Now you see there is an important difference between the two. You can say it is and it is possible. The moment we say it is, we are making a very definitive statement, okay? You are making a very definitive statement. It is. Now, if we say it could be. Now, for example, when we say it is a dog, or we say it could be a dog. Now, there is a big difference between the two statements, right? When we say it is a dog, we definitely say it is a dog. But when we say it could be a dog, we are sort of leaving some room. It could be a dog or it could not be a dog. So, there is some room for, now if I say it is a dog, then if you disagree, then we have a disagreement. Sometimes we fight. But if I say it could be a dog, no fight. Because I am not making a definitive statement. What I am saying is, it looks like a dog. So there is nothing to fight. Yeah, it looks like a dog, but it is not a dog. But if I say it is a dog, then of course somebody can say, no, it is something else. You see, so the Syadvada means actually how we make an assertion, how we make an statement, depending on the Anekantavada. In other words, what I would like you to see is our idea of reality shapes our idea of language. Now, what we see in reality is what we say in our language. So you have, I'm sorry, my throat is not very good today. The reality, Anekanta reality is what you really, reality can be many-sided, and then you are not really sure about it. Now, if your understanding of reality is something like that, then the idea is that how do you say that? According to Jainas, they say you say it with these 7 types. So this is called in English sometimes 7 types of predication. 7 types of predication. Say describing a situation. So now this is a relative assertion. Syad asti. It is possible that it is. Syad nasti. It is possible that it is not. Syad asti nasti. It is possible that it is both is and is not. Syad avaktavyam. It is possible that it cannot be said. Then next one, Syad asti avaktavyam. It is possible that it is, but it cannot be said. Syad nasti avaktavyam. It is possible that it is not, but cannot be said. Syad asti nasti avaktavyam. It is possible that it is both is and is not, but cannot be said. Now here you see something very interesting. You don't say asti nasti. You say syad nasti, syad nasti. But then you have asti, nasti, and both asti and nasti. But in any case, you have syad. So syad makes it is possible. It could be. So in other words, whenever you use this optative case in grammar, in Pali grammar it is called sattami, right? Gacchaya, vadeyya, right? When we say in Pali, gacchaya, we don't say that he goes, he may go. Tvang vadeyya. Buddha says anusareyatha. Now those are optative case. It means it is not a command. Say, you may do that. If you like, you do that. Okay? So there is a difference, very big difference. So here that difference is syad asti. It is possible that it is. So you don't make a definitive statement, you say that it is possible. So syad is there for all the positions. Apart from syad, we have asti, nasti, asti and nasti, then avaktavyam. According to Jainas, there can be a situation where we cannot say anything about particular things, so that is called avaktavyam. And then you have avaktavyam connected with again asti, nasti and asti, nasti. So this is basically called syadvada. Now based on our understanding of reality as many-sided, how you make statement is this. The underlying philosophy of the Jaina theory of reality and epistemology is non-dogmatism and non-absolutism. The absolute knowledge is possible only by a Kevalin who is omniscient. Now, actually, I said earlier to you, Jaina value ahimsa so much, non-violence so much, which means that Jaina doesn't like to get into dogmatic, ideological debates with people about things. Now, because of that, Jaina would not make any kind of definitive assertion, because the moment you make a definitive assertion, other person can disagree. But the moment you say that, make an assertion which allows room for further qualification, there is nothing to fight. In other words, the two very important insights lie behind this. One thing is limitedness of our human knowledge. Our knowledge is always limited. We don't know everything. The other thing is reality is very complex. Reality is much more complex than we see. Now, if you are intelligent, about anything, you will be saying something like, as far as I know. Whenever you say, as far as I know, you make a limit. You admit that there can be things which you don't know. Right? Now, if I admit that there can be things which I don't know, no fight, no conflict, right? Because I never make a definitive statement. If I say, no, it is not in the canon, then of course I am making a very definitive statement. But if I say, as far as I know, it is not in the canon, then even if you show me it is in the canon, there is no problem, because my knowledge is limited. So, this, when you take non-violence and this philosophy, these two are very important, because if you are non-violent, if you want to be maintaining ahimsa, no conflict with society, then not making definitive absolute statement is something very important. Now again, you can see, there are philosophically there are lots of points where Buddhism and Jainism go together. Okay, Buddhism and Jainism can be compared. Okay, underlying philosophy is non-dogmatism. Dogmatism means holding a view without any compromise. Now this comes from the concept of dogma. In Christian religion, dogma means there are certain things, dogmas. A dogma cannot be questioned. A dogma has to be accepted without questioning. Dogma. Now, non-dogmatism means there are no dogmas. There are no things that are not questionable according to Jainism. So therefore, this whole perception is what is called non-dogmatism. Or non-absolutism, the same thing. Absolute means something to be absolutely correct. Then no room for disagreement. Okay, no room for. But non-absolutism means the moment you say syad asti, you allow room for somebody else to correct you. But the moment you say asti, you are definitive. You are making asti. So, that's the Jaina view. But of course, again, you can see the Buddha's view is, different again. In Buddhism, we have asti, atti, natyan, But then, you can make a philosophical study between the two. Okay, so this is basically the Jaina philosophy, Jaina epistemology and Jaina theory of reality. Now we will move into the practice. The main accept of Jain ethics is ahimsa or non-violence. Avihimsa, sometimes called ahimsa, avihimsa. The Jaina practice of non-violence extends to all living beings, including the plant life. The 4-month rainy season retreat was mainly meant to avoid harming any living beings, including fresh growing plants. This practice was adopted also by the Buddhist monasticism. You know that actually Buddhist monks started observing rainy season because of the Jaina influence. Initially, the Buddhist monks did not observe rainy season. Even in the rainy season, monks were going here and there. Then people started complaining, how can these Buddhist monks go here and there, treading on the newly arisen grass, plants. Now, you know, that was the idea. But that is the religious view of Jainism. Because Jainism believed that all living things, not only beings, all living things, even trees. Of course, in a way we can say trees have some type of life. But Buddhism, we don't say trees are conscious. We do know that there is life, but we don't say it is conscious. But according to Jaina, even the tree, a plant has some form of life, not very similar to the life we have, but you know, some very minor form of life. They called it jiva. Jiva is life. They call these things ekajivi, one jiva, you know, the very minor thing. But still it is a jiva. So according to Jainism, they believed that, you know, all living beings, when we say all living beings, including trees and plants. Now, the Buddhist view is when we say sabbe satta is broader than sabbe manussa. When we meditate, we don't say sabbe manussa, right? We say sabbe satta. But Jainas go even beyond that. Jainas go even beyond that. When they look at ahimsa, non-violence, even the non-violence to the not only beings, even trees and plants. Now Buddhism is very influenced by this philosophy. That is why Upasampada monk cannot pluck flowers, cannot pluck leaves. And that is why this rainy season practice, which is very popular in Buddhist countries. But it started with Jaina influence. So actually Jainas never travel around the 4-month rainy season retreat. Mainly meant to avoid harming any living beings, including fresh growing plants. This practice was adopted also by the Buddhist monasticism. We know that Buddhist Another fundamental practice of Jainism is to undergo austere practices, among which are fasting, taking only one meal a day given by others, plucking one's hair on the head and face by hand, etc. This practice is connected to the doctrine of karma, according to which one's karmas are stored in one's soul, jiva, and one has to burn these past karmas by ascetic behavior, tapas. Moksha is possible only by burning all past karmas. The Buddha criticized this practice in the Mahadukkhakkanda Sutta Majjhima Nikaya. Now, another fundamental practice of Jainism is to undergo austere practices, among which are fasting. Actually, Jaina life is very austere. Earlier we saw that Jaina Mahavira lived naked, which is a very difficult thing to do. But he lived naked because ultimately he wanted to give up all the desires, including the desire for clothes. Okay, so that was the idea. And then taking only one meal a day given by others. And also they have this practice of plucking hair and beard and you know, this thing. So there are many other the austere practices. In fact, the strict Jaina monasticism do not own even an alms bowl. Nothing. So no even alms bowl. Then how do they eat? Very strict Jaina monastics, they go to a place and you know, they just hold the hand. So then they put something on the hand and then you eat it. Again, so you just eat, and also you are not seated. When you are eating, they stand. And also just take into your hand. So you don't have even alms bowl. So you can see why Buddhism calls Jainism an extreme view. Because according to, of course, in the Buddhist tradition, Buddhist monks and nuns have alms bowl, right? They go in with the alms bowl. But here, it's just not all, but very strict Jaina practitioners, even today. Actually, if you some videos you can see in the Google, it's very interesting. How they practice, how they behave. So one way of doing it, you eat like this. So people come and offer things and you just eat. In the public, no seated, because eating is considered to be something very unimportant according to them. And then you just take only one meal. So it is like that. And the second is practice is connected to the doctrine of karma and tapas. Tapa means heat. Tapa means heat. Through your heat, you burn the karmas. So that is the view of Jainas. So in other words, Jainas believe that in your samsara, you have accumulated so much karma accumulation is there. So you have to burn all the karmas. Once you burn all the karmas, you will achieve a kevalin. So that is the idea. And the moksha is liberation, has to burn these karmas by ascetic behavior. Moksha is possible only by burning all past karmas. Five great practices, Panchamaha Vrata. The five practices are all for all Jaina followers to practice throughout their life. For the lay people, these same practices are applied in a lesser manner. Anuvrata. So the Mahavrata for the monastic traditions, Anuvrata is for the ordinary people. But the same thing, Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, you can say, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, non-attachment. Now these are considered to be the main virtues, main practices. So the entire Jaina life is organized around these practices. Ahimsa, we discussed so far, Satya, truthfulness, Asteya, non-stealing, Brahmacharya, celibacy, Aparigraha, non-attachment. Now Aparigraha is the rationale for the nakedness. It is because non-attachment, you are not even attached to your clothes. Okay? So the simple living, not owning material objects except what is essential. Peacock feather, whisk, water pot and scripture. Actually when a Jaina monastics have a peacock, the whisk or small brush-like thing made of peacock feather. Now every Jaina monastic person has that, because whenever they want to go somewhere or whenever they just brush aside from that. Now peacock feathers are very soft, so you can remove ants and any other small beings with that without harming them. So this makes them very limited, because they can't travel or walk around too much, because by walking, like in the Chakkupala story, you may be treading on the small insects and killing them. So in order to minimize harm, they don't walk around very much. And even if they walk, they in the very strict people, they clean the path, they remove that's again, you would might feel that is extreme position, because you can't walk around. But then peacock for the feather whiskis, and also the water pot and the scripture. These are the three things that a Jaina follower will have. Not only that, the strict Jaina people wear some kind of mouth cover. The mouth cover is because when you inhale, they believe that you also inhale small insects, even unseen, almost unseen small insects, by breathing in and then destroying them. So in order to prevent that, they use some kind of the covering, some kind of, the semi-mask on your face. And then, I have seen sometimes, they use something like this, the, when they talk. When they are silent, of course, they are like this. But if you talk, then they always some piece of paper or piece of cloth in front of your mouth. It is not a bad thing, actually. So you hold something in front of your mouth, and then these are basically to ensure that you are not harming anybody. So these things, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. Now again, if you look at carefully, you can see the 5 precepts. Except the 5th one, basically this is 5 precepts. Ahimsa, satya, no stealing, brahmacharya, and aparigraha. Aparigraha is, the much broader concept where, you don't have any attachment to any particular thing, not even to your clothes. So the whole idea is that a religious person is so simple, nothing. Now, if you contrast this with the other religious traditions, in other religious traditions, more you become higher in the tradition, so many things you have, right? So many ways of clothing and this thing, that thing, and so many things. But Jainas is very interesting. More you become advanced, less you have. Ultimately nothing. Ultimately nothing. You just go naked. So you see 2 different ways of the people's behavior. Sometimes the Buddhist monks you can see, when you become a very big Buddhist monk, you have so many things, And Christian clergy, you have so many things, so many clothes with gold and this thing and all these things. But Jaina is the totally different. More you develop, more you become higher person. So Jaina Mahavira ultimately, So this aparigraha is represented by not owning absolutely anything. Jainas believe that all living beings pass through 84,000 births before they attain liberation. In the process, one's soul may obtain 5 types of bodies: earth, water, fire, air, and vegetable. Soul has 3 qualities: guna, consciousness, chaitanya, bliss, sukha, and energy. So these are some of the ideas, and I don't want to go into details. But basically, they believe that 84,000 100,000, 100,000 births before they attain liberation. In the process, one's soul may obtain 5 types of bodies: earth body, water body, fire body, air body, and vegetable. Vegetable means, even you can become a vegetable. You can become, the very, very low, according to them. Soul has 3 gunas. Soul is consciousness, bliss, and energy. Now, one major difference between Buddhism and Jainism is Buddhism rejects the concept of soul, but they believe in the concept of soul. Okay. Moksha Marga, path to liberation. In order to attain liberation, one has to practice what are called the 3 jewels, 3 ratana. Again, you're familiar in Buddhism also. But the 3 ratana, according to Jaina view: right vision, samyak darshana; right knowledge, samyak jnana; right conduct, samyak charitra. Now, also you can see how similar these things to Buddhist Eightfold Path. We have Sammaditthi, Samma Sankappa, and so on. Jainas have Samyak. Of course, that is Sanskrit term. They use Ardhamagadi terms. So the Samyak Jnana, Samyak Darshana, Samyak Jnana, and Samyak Charitra. In addition to these 3, texts often add right austerity, Samyak Tap or Samyak Tapas, making it 4th jewel. So the concept of jewel, 3 ratana, now we use in Buddhism to refer to the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. But according to them, 3 Ratna or 4 Ratna is basically the aspect of the path. So you have Samyak Darshana, Samyak Jnana, Samyak Charitra, and also Samyak Tap, right austerity. So these are the main religious ideas. The entire path for Digambaras consists of 28 practices. 5 great practices, vows, 5 regulations, samiti, control of the 5 senses, Panchendriya Nirodha, 6 essential duties, Shada Vashyaka, and 7 niyamas, rules or regulation. 5 great practices, we will just go through it. They were mentioned. Now the 5 great practices are these things: Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. Okay? So out of these 28 practices, 5 great practices. 5 great practices mentioned above. 5 regulations. Walk carefully, weaving 2 yards. Not speak evil words. Not criticize others. Accept food from a disciple only if it is free from 46 faults. I don't mention here what are the faults, but of course there are lots of limitations from whom you can accept food. Handling carefully whatever one possesses and dispose body waste at a place free of living beings. Actually, these are some of the things like making Jaina life very limited, because even dispose body waste at a place free of living beings, very strict Jainas use open space somewhere as toilet. So they are not using regular toilets in that sense, So it is not very easy at all, for this life to be lived completely faithfully. So these are 5 regulations. Control of the 5 senses, we know that, removing attachment to the objects of the 5 senses. 6 essential duties, namely meditate on equanimity towards all living beings, pay homage to Tirthankaras, pay homage to Siddhas. Tirthankaras means the religious teachers like our Buddha. Siddhas means like our Arahant. And Arahantas and Acharyas are, Arahanta is little lesser Acharyas. Repentance to drive away all good and bad past karmas. Repentance means actually practicing tapas. Renunciation and giving up attachment to body, focusing on the soul. So these are the 7 essential duties. And then you have 7 rules. Not to use tooth powder to clean teeth. Sleep on hard ground. Not to take bath. Eat standing up. Take food once a day. Pluck hair on the face and the head. And renounce clothes. Now you can see these are not very easy thing to do. And even strictly speaking, Jaina, particularly Jaina monastics, should not take bath. But actually that doesn't mean that they are not clean, okay? That doesn't mean that they are not clean, because you don't take really bath to take clean. You can, damp a piece of cloth and, you can wash your body. So, but strictly speaking, you are not supposed to take bath. Okay. So now, this why it is not very easy for a social living, because in a society where today we are doing a lot of things with water, but again it depends on, even in any society, so much use of water, soap and everything is a very modern thing, right? In our rural societies where there is not tap water, people don't use that much water anyway. So anyhow, not to use tooth powder to clean teeth. But it's interesting. Actually, I don't know whether toothpaste is okay. But according to this tooth powder, sleep on hard ground, no beds, no nothing. You can see, that life is so simple. You just lie down and sleep. No clothes, no beds, no nothing, something like that. Not to take bath. Eat standing up. So you don't need all these things to eat. You just stand up eating. So actually, I think in a Jaina monastery, if you look at the strict Jaina monastery, absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Take food once a day, pluck hair on the face and the head by hand. You remove your hair. Do sometimes Burmese monks do this? I have seen that. Pluck hair on the face and the head and renounce clothes. Okay, so you can see actually the difference between Buddhism and Jainism is quite a lot. Now, for example, according to the Buddha, monks and nuns should take bath every day if they can, right? So they're totally different, should take bath every day. Now that is why Buddha really wanted to practice a middle path. So you take bath not for the decoration, but simply for the cleanliness. Now the monastic life and cleanliness is something very, very important. If you look at the Bhikshuni Vinaya, also the cleanliness for the Bhikshunis is something very important. For the both monks and nuns, Buddha took bath. There are a lot of stories about Buddha going to the river and taking bath and like that. And then monks taking bath. So this how they treat the body is something very important. So in the Jaina tradition, you just don't regard your body. But today when you see the Jaina practitioners, even if you see naked practitioners, they are not dirty actually, they are very clean, even though they are naked. And of course the Jaina Shvetambaras, their white clothes are very clean. So it doesn't mean actually unclean according to today's standards, but the practices are there, 7 rules. Siddha, the person who attained liberation by following the path is called Siddha, accomplished one. The word Arahanta is used to refer to those who are advanced in the path. So the Arahant is not exactly like the use of Arahant in the Buddhist tradition. Siddhas and the Kevalins, those are the Arahant. At his death he goes to the Siddha Shila, the summit of the universe, and will be eternally there. He has the highest knowledge, omniscience called Kaivalya. So when you attain Siddhahood, of course you are born up with Siddha Shila. That means according to them, highest point in the universe, and they live eternally. Now, so these are some of the differences with Buddhism and Jainism. Okay, I think I will wind up from that. This is very brief introduction to Jaina philosophy and Jaina religion to you. My main purpose of this lecture is, as I said earlier, it is very important thing to understand Buddhism better, and also the historical origin of Buddhism. You must really study Jainism. And also with our knowledge in Buddhism, we can understand Jainism better. And Jainism, particularly today, is becoming a very attractive religion for several reasons. One very important thing is they are so environmental friendly. Nothing happens that harms environment from Jainism. And also they are non-violent. So Jainas have never involved with any kind of war or that type of situation. Maybe Jainas are fighting themselves sometime, but they don't fight with others. So you can see in that modern world, Jainism is being attracted, by many people. Many people are attracted to Jainism because of these qualities, particularly the environmental quality, simplicity, and also non-violence. So very environmental friendly. Consumption is very simple, so that also is conducive to preservation of environment. and also non-violent. They don't go for war. So, these are some of the very important characteristics of Jainism, that people are attracted today. Okay, I will wind up from that. Hoping that you will be further studying Jainism, including their Ardhamagadi language like Pali. Okay. Do you have any questions or comments or anything, clarification? Yes, sir.
It is essence of the origin. What is the essence of the Jainism?
But is the essence?
Essence of the Jainism. Destination is kind of goal or origin. What is the essence of Jainism?
I didn't exactly. What do you mean? The essence of Jainism? Is that what you mean?
Yes, their teaching, their discourses.
Or you mean I mean something like you can say in Buddhism, if you say Anatmavada, Anattavada, in a similar manner, you can talk about Ahimsa, non-violence. I mean, non-violence is the main ethical character. But of course, if you look at the epistemology, it is Anekantavada, the non-dogmatism. So, non-violence, non-dogmatism, those are the two main ideas actually, Avihimsa and Anekantavada. But when it comes to practice, there are many other things. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Are there any books on Jainism in Burmese language?
Moksha means nirvana.
Yeah, yeah. Moksha means, all Indian religions, moksha means same. Yeah, some of you can write on Jainism actually. Yeah. Okay, so in the absence of any more questions, I will wind up the class in the morning, and we will usually meet again 2:30. Thank you very much.